That's why they started producing more. But we are also part of that cycle. You know, we also have metal molds. We also are part of that bit. And that's a part that you shouldn't forget as a part of your industry. So I'm always amazed when I come to companies, what a huge waste of capital. They make samples, they make molds, they make last, and whatever was done last season, they forget about that. That didn't sell, never mind, forget about it. The archives of many companies are ginormous. People don't know what they have. I come to last factories, and Romagnoli in Italy, they open the vaults of their last, and you're like, and people still come to make new ones? What the hell is there that's not already there? But it's a different way of thinking, so that's what I find interesting. Now, that same way of thinking, what can you do, I'm going to talk a little bit about, because my part is going to be about the second day of our seminar. So, as Yazine explained in the beginning, we have 2 days of very interesting talks about the future of footwear production. The first day is about how can I use my existing machinery for customization, for local production, to make it smarter, etc. The second day is how can I produce footwear in an entirely different way, starting from scratch. Am I still on? Oh, yeah, no problems. And a big part of that, am I on? Because I don't hear myself, but anyway, a big part of that is footwear production in store. Can everybody hear me anyway? Otherwise you move in. Okay, yeah. It's footwear production in store. This is something that we believe in very much, and I'll tell you why. These are 3 pillars that we use in SLAM when we talk about innovation. So what is it then that we want to innovate, and how do we want to make stuff that is meaningful, so indeed it has an actual improvement for the customer? The first one is usually one that's most forgotten. That's the emotional value. I can innovate in technology as much as I like. If the consumer has no emotional bond with that product and finds it ugly or doesn't find it interesting, you're still not going to sell it. So that's a huge part of the whole story. And it's not just about the shoe as such, of course, that's also about the marketing, etc. But that's also why so many people talk about customization. I personally don't believe that consumers want to design everything themselves from scratch. That would drive you crazy. Even designers don't want to do that. But they do like to have a more personal connection to their product. And those can be lots of different things. So whether it's somebody designing it for you, you making part of it yourself, you acquiring the product in a special event or special experience. You see even more examples now of products that you cannot buy. You can only win them, for instance. That's again another idea that people are working on. It's all to create the bond to the product. Why do people want it? How long do they use it? And especially if we're thinking about how can we make consumers buy less or, you know, more prudent so that they use the product for longer, those are generally all related to the emotional value. Second part is how can we make it more functional? So functional, made to your body. Can it have wearable technology that basically interacts with your surrounding? Can it have technology that talks to the floor and basically gives you input? Some people always smile at me when I talk about that, but if you think about, for instance, self-driving cars in the future, there will be no road signs. The way the car communicates is with the road. So the data that a car needs is in the road. The same system will happen for footwear. That's your direct contact to the ground. Not only can you generate energy with it, it also is a way of transporting data to you or from you to a bigger data cloud. That's a part of innovation. That can also be done in store. It could be that you walk through the city and that you're directed to certain places. And then we want things that are harmless, and harmless is anything ranging from environmental sustainability, social sustainability, no exploitation. Basically, it should do no harm to people or planet. All these things can come together in an entirely new way of producing and buying and selling footwear, and that's in store. And that's what I'm going to speak about. So, yeah, why don't you just do that? Get going. So, it could be really interesting. Well, I mean, that would also make trade shows like this completely obsolete, you know? But it's a way to think about, you know? Everybody's here talking about, okay, this is the last GDS in this sense, what is going to happen now, what is going to be the next trade show, etc., etc. Well, this is one of the possible solutions. Now, many of you will know about Adidas and Nike and Reebok and lots of other people's plans for local speed factories, meaning highly automated factories that are basically back in Europe, back in the USA, and in the case of Adidas, they keep saying that they would like this to happen also in store. So they have some projects already when it comes to knitting, but they also want to do the full shoe in store. And most people indeed think, wow, that's really cool. Great, they should do that. I personally also think they should do that. But Yassine showed you in his lecture the example of Desma. Desma is a big machinery company. They found a way to make injection molded shoes, customized within 15 minutes. I was there to do that, so I went through that process, 15 minutes. But then the big question was, how much will the consumer pay for that at the end of the line? Because interestingly enough, so many years we've been working on, if only consumers would understand how difficult it is to make a shoe, then they would pay a lot more for it. At the same time, we've been automating like crazy, and if you look at sneaker production, there are basic sneakers that really can be made under 10 minutes, easily. But the consumer doesn't see that. So, but what if you do show them that? And that's what you hear all the brands talk about. Within 10 minutes, there's your shoe. Cool. How much am I going to pay at the end, you know? So that's like 10 minutes, that's 1 cup of coffee, and cha-ching, 250 euros and up. So, you know, that will be interesting. Will consumers really want that? If you're the first person to do it, maybe yes, because then you're still cool and it's new and it's innovative. If everybody starts to do that, that will be a rush for price. That's just the fast food chain among footwear. Is that what we necessarily want? I don't think so. So what do you do then? One example is maybe take inspiration from the car industry. A lot of people know cars are made by robots. Nobody seems to have a problem with that. Nobody seems to think it devaluates the car. Why? Because it's super high-tech, precision. People think, oh, you need this type of production in order to have the quality for the car. So for instance, the Adidas Futurecraft project, where they have a machine that basically carves out very minutely the upper from one piece of leather, could be an example of something that could be robotic, highly precision, that people are impressed by and would accept from fully automated production. This is an example from Berlin. It's called Jung. This is a company that makes glasses, fully in store. Both the lenses and the frame. So you go there, you have your eye scanned, you know, you have the whole recipe, and basically within 20 minutes you can have your pair. That's wonderful. It's also interesting how indeed they are showing this full production. Because we're coming from a country now, or basically a whole continent, that has no experience anymore with production. You know, in China, a lot of people would prefer not to see the factory because they've been working there, they know it, you know? But for us, no. It's like a mystery of how is that even done. So people love to see how that is being made, so you see the whole process in the store. And if you go to their website, you'll also read how they're indeed pushing the price. One of their main arguments is, okay, it's going to be anywhere between 50 and 149 euros to have your full power glasses, lenses included. That is cheap for glasses. So that's a direction that you can choose to take. You can also think of robotics for the sake of entertainment. On the left-hand side, you see Soulbox in Berlin. Many of you will know this store, it's been around for a long time, and they have a robot since the longest time in their storage. It's not necessary, you know, you could also have somebody from sales just pick the box and take it to you, but it's really cool looking. So whenever they need a box from the storage, then the robot comes to get it. Now I can imagine in the future very different systems where there's much more interaction between humans and robots. The picture on the right is an example of that. It's a jacket that helps you communicate to your robots. Robots do not see where you are. So that's generally, if you have a robotic production, like with cars, they do not want humans in the factory. It's also downright dangerous. The robot is programmed to do a certain sequence of movements for whatever task they're doing. They don't see if somebody's in the way. If you're in front of the robot and you don't know what they're doing, batch, you know, so that enough accidents have happened. This is a jacket that has sensors that allow you to directly communicate and move with the robot, and the robot to respond to the human's movements. So I can imagine, what if you look at footwear production from the angle of what needs to be automated and what should be done by humans? I don't see why humans should necessarily be gluing a shoe or something. It's not really pleasant work anyway. Could be really exacting quick, have a robot do it. But the beautiful hand finishing, for instance, that Italians can also have, with the beautiful detailing where you want this type of imperfection. that could be the human part. So how can you create this interaction also in store? Those are also the things that will add value, you know? Then we have completely new ways of producing that will allow you to do things in store. This is a company called Feats, one of the speakers at our seminar. We had them as well 3 years ago. They've expanded enormously. They are the first brand in the world to produce fully 3D printed wearable shoes. I have so many people who come to me, that's not possible still. Oh yeah, hell it is. So, you know, and if you don't believe it, come on April 21st and meet with them, because they do. And I've worn the shoes. These are the shoes you see on the right-hand side. They're not crook-esque, so they're not crook-like plastic shells. They think, since they're not from footwear, they think in a 3D printing way. So they think about what the machine can do. They've developed a system that uses the technology to create a material that looks like a knit, feels like a knit, behaves like a knit, and then print the outsole similar to what you would have with a molded outsole. They can make a full pair in under 4 hours, maybe 3, depending on complexity and size. That's really quick, and it will become quicker in the future. The time will only go down on that. How do they do that? They have very simple printers that they have built for them. And basically, their whole factory of a few hundred printers can be operated by one person. If you want to see how that works, we are actually demonstrating something similar with our partner Atomlab from Italy at CIMAC at the end of this month, February 21-23 in Italy, same time as Linea Pella, where we will have a fully robotic footwear line and a print farm, a wall, basically with many printers, where we are making shoes actually on the spot, using a very similar system. Now, what Fix is doing now is going from online sales into physical sales. This is their first store, the Digital Cobbler. You come in, you have your feet scanned, you choose from a pre-selection, you can determine color, and it will be printed in store for you. Lots of people love to see how their shoes are being made. And this is around, at this moment, $150 retail. So that's a really good price also to buy this for. They're coming to talk at the seminar about how they're doing this, why they're doing this, and how this format actually works. They're the first to do it. Interestingly enough, they are not coming from the footwear industry, and they're not one of the larger sportswear companies who will be doing this, but the sportswear companies have a lot more invested in traditional technology. If you have your gazillion Desma injection carousels, you cannot say, oh, let me just throw those out and get printers. You know, there's a difference. So I expect that, just as the example that Yassine had of the energy company, that we will find completely different parties to do this, to produce footwear. Ultimaker, the little machine that you see there, it's our basic go-to printer, very simple, super reliable. At the seminar, if you come, you'll see, I cannot talk too much about it because it's under wraps, a whole new printer, which is interesting for the footwear industry, that they will be premiering then exclusively and find partners in the footwear industry to help develop it further. Those are people that are not from our industry, but might be the footwear producers of the future. And the whole focus of that way of production is in store, not necessarily in factory. This is another project that we're also presenting together with the Technical University of Eindhoven. We will be presenting this also at CIMAC. And this is not only a way to make the shoes in store, it's also a very different way of making shoes. What I never understand is that, for instance, a lot of people now, when they speak to me about 3D printing, they speak about insoles, orthopedic insoles. Everybody and their mom wants to print orthopedic insoles. Fine. What I'm always surprised by, if you make insoles and you put them in whatever shoe, the shoe is a huge influence on the function of your insole. The shoe that you put it in could annihilate the entire function of your insole. So why do you not have an insole and an outsole that are one unit, so that the density and the support that you need are not just in the insole, but in the outsole? So that's what we're doing. I'm not showing it yet here. You'll have to come to Italy to see that. What happens is you have your feet scanned, pressure scanned. The software generates an outsole and insole model where all these little bits are different density. So not only is that interesting in terms of comfort, it's also an interesting system. It's also a different way of teaching designers. Now, if you're a designer, they teach you, you are the one to sketch the shoe. In the future, designers are the people to make the process, to think about how does that process work. This is also designed, here I have to speak louder on the to the beat. But this is actually what we will be showing there, and around this outsole we will have like a moccasin type construction that has a laser cut pattern of this, where you can just click the outsole through. You'll have to come to Italy to see it, but it's a completely glueless, designed for disassembly construction that you could make in store, that uses the printer and also creates a much better fitting, easy to make and affordable shoe. There can also be different systems of making, like knitting. Lots of people have talked about that. We have a designer, Xiao Sheshe, who is the ex-head of Nokia design, again somebody who's from a very different industry, and he's the first to make a fully tubular knit. Most shoes now are in a flatbed knitting system. He uses the tubular 3D sock type knitting to do it in one go, and is basically pressed with heat and pressure into a model. Again, something to do in store. I mean, knitting machines are not very large, they're not very loud. So, for instance, you have a store already in the UK, in London, but you've had the same from Adidas in Berlin, Knit For You, where you have systems that people go on an iPad, they choose a model, they choose certain patterns, how they place them, and it's knitted in store for you. All these things will happen. But now the question is, and that's for us as Slam even a new customer group, if we produce in store, are these the machines that we want to see? When I was at Desma, their CEO, Christian, he's also going to speak for us, was saying, my dream is to start a Desma store, middle of Manhattan. I was like, well, that's super cool, but how are you going to do that? Footwear machinery, or any type of machinery that you now find in a factory, was never designed to show a consumer. It's meant to be functional, quick, and efficient, and sturdy, and all that. So, will we want to see these machines, or are we going to see machines much more like this? On the right-hand side, you see a tea dispenser in Japan. I honestly couldn't find any attractive-looking industrial machines. Even when they make robots, they make them look extremely high-tech and clean and like Terminator-type futuristic. For most people, that's actually quite intimidating. So on the left-hand side, you see an example in Hollywood where they have actually a fully functioning Willy Wonka factory. Well, I would totally foresee the Willy Wonka footwear factory. The question is, if I want to go to a store to see my shoes being produced, do I really want to see the actual production? Or do I want to have a really interesting, entertaining experience that also maybe teaches me something about my shoe, or maybe not? Maybe it's a whole show of an evening, and at the end of the evening I get my pair of shoes. You know, it could be a completely different thing. Why now people think, when they think of manufacturing, it's about the furthest from entertainment as possible. My future vision is to merge entertainment and manufacturing, so that your factory store doesn't just have to be an actual representation of the production process. It can involve a lot more. I think most people, when you would ask them, would you love to visit a Willy Wonka footwear factory to have a super surreal experience and have a pair of cool shoes at the end? I think everybody would say yes. So I think much more in that direction, rather than just focusing on speed, because speed means price in the sense of low price. And you can also say I want to have added value in the sense of emotional experience that I have with that. So again, to close off, if you want to understand more about this, all the pictures that I've shown, these people are actually coming to talk at our Slaminar, and not just talk, but also to demonstrate their technology. So it's going to be a combination of speaking, and we have a whole hall with everybody demonstrating their technology. Not only that, what we have found from the past years that we've done this, that at the Slaminar, since so many people who visit, that was my microphone, are actually into innovation and innovate together. After the Slaminar, we find that lots of new initiatives are being started because the innovators in the industry meet each other and meet up and team up. So then I will screen for the best part of the presentation. For anybody who wants to come, if you register